just to, I realize we ran out of time, but I would like to invite very briefly Jimmy Cocking. He's in the audience, patiently waiting for a panel discussion, and I would really like to get his insights related to clean energy. Jimmy is the CEO of Desert Knowledge Australia. We had a great discussion yesterday about barriers and enablers related to clean energy, and of course this has implications for clean air as well. Jimmy, would you like to say a few words? The spot, I thought it's a good an opportunity to meet.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I get an opportunity tomorrow as well, but it's supposed to be hotter tomorrow, so we'll see how we go. But my name's Jimmy Cocking. I'm the CEO of Desert Knowledge Australia, which is a statutory body of the NT government, just set up 19 years ago to set up an Indigenous land use agreement with the local Aranda people for a 73-hectare block of lands between here and the airport. We've got the solar centre there. It was set up for research, for education, and to build partnerships and collaboration towards a more sustainable economic, social and environmental deserts, and not just deserts here, but deserts across the globe. And so it was a pretty big vision I got set up for. And, you know, there's been a review done and, you know, found that it didn't achieve as much as had been hoped, but there has been some great wins along the way. One of the big wins is the renewable energy work. We're part of the consortium, and I suppose just before I go much further, I just want to acknowledge I'm on Aranda country and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And also I really want to put a big shout out to Anne-Marie, because she made this happen. And I think that, you know, should give her a round of applause. And I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to do the same again tomorrow, because I've been on some of the phone calls over the last few months, or probably 6 months in organising this. And I just want to acknowledge that, because it's a big work to do that, and particularly bring all these people from the climate science together. I suppose some of the challenges, it was great to see some of the presentations today, and sorry I had to duck out today, but I think, you know, there are technical challenges, and I'll talk more about this tomorrow with the Alice Future Grid project, of which as the CEO, I'm authorised to talk about it. But there's some great outcomes that are going to come out of that in the next 12 months, and that's a 2-year project, ARENA funded, that is looking at what the barriers are to getting to 50% renewable energy, and that's 50% total electricity energy. So, yeah, that's including grid forming batteries and setting up a microgrid on the precinct. We've got, and hopefully we'll get a few people out there tomorrow. We're going to take you on a tour of the solar centre tomorrow. So please stick around, bring a hat, bring some water, because it will be about 3 o'clock. It'll be this time tomorrow, and it's supposed to be 35. So good taste of the desert weather, which is coming back. But I think now some of the big areas that we're dealing, you know, and it's interesting that there's not that many local people here. And I think that's also because there's a lot of people working, and, you know, try to get 5 days off to come to a climate conference in town is hard for people. But I think it's great that everybody's here, and hopefully there's some recording happening, and there's some of the word will come out, and we'll spread the word and get some more people here tomorrow. And probably Friday, every seat will be full. The challenge we've got, technical's part of it. I think a big part of it's cultural barriers, and it's not cultural in terms of Indigenous culture, but it's cultural in terms of organisations and businesses. That there's a talk the other day where there's a presentation about Future Grid, and the project director was talking about how in the power grid, everybody has, you know, depends what hammer you're holding is the nails that you think they are. So if you're a researcher, everything needs more research. If you're a solar installer, just more solar. If you're a gas generator, well, we just got to, you know, integrate gas better. And that, you know, ultimately whatever people are holding is what they think there needs to be more of. And actually what needs to happen is there needs to be actually more getting together and actually identifying these barriers, like what Supriya put up there before, actually sitting down in a room with people and overcoming and working those through. And that's hard, because some people don't want to hear hard truths, but the reality is that that's the way that we're going to get through that. And that's part of, you know, I speak here as though I've been at DKA for a long time. I've only been there 2 months, but previously I ran the Arid Lands Environment Centre for the last 14 years. And so been involved in the renewable energy sector more from an advocacy point of view. You know, the key is getting people together, and that's part of what we're doing with Desert Knowledge, and we're being positioned by government to be doing a lot more of this auspicing work of actually bringing people into the room. And that's why I've been sort of in and out today, because there's been meetings with people today to start talking about this vision, about that we actually do need to get together. And I think it's great that we've got some of the leading climate scientists in the country here in this room and aspiring. I think that's part of the story. We've got to get, you know, the politicians have got to hear it. We've got to get more people to understand it and do that translation work, because I think, you know, we've been banging on about climate for as long as I've been I remember David Suzuki talking about it in '88 and being concerned about it as an 8-year-old, and still we kind of haven't managed to cut through. So we've got to find those ways to be able to tell that story and to be able to help move hearts and minds, because the heads don't necessarily work, because people butt their heads against each other because of where they're coming from. And I think we need to do more of the sitting down with a low smoke fire, but, you know, sitting down around, you know, sitting down and actually having the conversations and finding what the ways are that we can actually come together and talk about it. And that's where these issues, like with up in Tennant Creek with what's his name again? Frank, that's it, Norman Frank. With Norman Frank's house, and yeah, that came together because there was an issue was identified that the prepaid systems are a barrier to people having solar on their public housing. And so people came together and said, how can we solve this? The minister got involved and said, we've got to solve this. And it got done. And I think we got to see more of that. And I think I'm hopeful that we've got to change a government federally that's going to actually, they're willing to listen, and they've set a target. There's at least some movement in that direction rather than active resistance. And I just think that, you know, with forums like this and symposiums like this are going to be important. And I think as we get more people around the table and get more momentum, there's room for everyone in this space. It's just a matter of people working out where they fit in. And if they don't fit into the future, we've got to find ways to transition those industries so that people aren't losing jobs. And also out here, particularly creating jobs, because that's going to be, and I'll talk about this more tomorrow, but there's out in communities, there are no jobs. There's not much opportunity for people at all. So for kids that are growing up there, just, you know, they hear about climate change, they hear about all that, you know, just the heaviness that comes down on people. And we need to create opportunities out there for people, and we need to actually do that long, hard work. And I know that there's the captains of industry talk about, oh, we need to import more workers, we need to do that. But we actually need to do that long, hard work of actually building a workforce and doing workforce development in communities, and actually enabling Aboriginal people to be part of an economic development framework rather than not, because the alternative is that the gap will continue to widen. And what we need to be able to do more of is a climate justice approach. We need to be looking at this from a justice issue, and the people who've had the least amount to do with global warming are the people who are suffering at first and worst. And we need to make sure that they are at the front of solutions, particularly in their country. And they can't solve the problems for everyone, but we need to listen, and we need to actually learn and realise that we don't have all the answers. And I think I'll just stop there, because I could talk about this for ages. And I know it's hot, but thanks everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity as well.
Thanks very much, Jimmy, for the important messages and contributions. Can't wait to hear more about it tomorrow. I'm conscious that we're going well over time, but also really want to allow space for some questions from the audience. First, we will take one online, but first we've got a little online surprise that I'll let Anne-Marie talk to you about.
Thank you for the healthy environment, for the HEAL talks today and the presentations. It's been really wonderful. I'm really pleased to tell you that your colleague, Professor Shiva Nagendra, is online, and he's about to appear up on the screens to join in live from India with this Q&A. So could we welcome Shiva, please? And if I may kick off the questions, so for the audience, we're broadcasting this live. So we did have a question online. So if I might kick it off with that and then pass over. This is a question from Erin Dunn. After a 6-year battle by residents of Santa Teresa, the Northern Territory Court of Appeal recently upheld a ruling that state-owned housing must be reasonably comfortable to be considered habitable. Could this finding also be used as an enabler incentive for shifts to cleaner energy and better housing design? Could HEAL and other initiatives like NESP help inform best ways to make public housing comfortable now and in a future climate? Thank you, Erin.
Over to our panelists. As Sotiris, you've got the mic next to you.
Sorry, I have to admit I didn't capture the question.
Sotiris, partly to repeat what was said, Erin Dunn asked the question based on Northern Territory legal decision, which was that housing in the Northern Territory needs to be made effectively more habitable. And then the question followed on, does that provide an opportunity for clean energy and healthier housing to be important for the Northern Territory? Paraphrasing what Erin said. I know Erin quite well.
Thanks, David. That's great. Yeah, Jimmy, please go.
Well, I think that this goes to a different dimension of what we're talking about. So ultimately, I've got a science background myself, biomedical and social science, but it actually is a legal issue. And I think that, our system operates in a systems of law. There's conversations around constitution. We've got Uluru dialogue. The legal system, similar research, works on precedent. So, by testing the legal case, the Santa Teresa residents have managed to create a precedent. And if it's been upheld by the court, which is great news, that's going to change the liability for government and make the bureaucrats who generally are living, no disrespect of bureaucrats, but the people who are living more comfortably will have to start making decisions with that in mind, because they don't want to be held legally liable for doing that. And so it's a great precedent, because I can tell you Santa Teresa is not the only community that's got uninhabitable housing. It's probably got some of the better ones stuff, to be honest. But at the same time, this just goes to similar issues around water and the criticality of water in desert communities as well. And there's a legal case at the moment with Laramba, which has got 2.5 times the allowable uranium in their water, and that's filtered. And so there's work being done to filter that water. But again, I think that this goes to that, if we're going to change, research is part of the story and science is part of the story, but the law is the way that we change the country. And I think that it's a really good start.
Any questions from the audience? Any of the presentations today?
Can I ask a question? I would like to thank again Professor Shiva Nagendra and his team from IIT Madras for their contribution to the C4 HEAL project and the clean energy, the clean environment planetary health in Asia projects. I would like to ask Shiva if he's optimistic about clean air and improving air quality in India. We know that it's a huge impact to public health. We present some maps looking at presenting air pollution related deaths worldwide. India is one of the countries more affected by air pollution, and I would like to hear from Professor Shiva if he thinks that India is moving in the right direction and if the impacts of air pollution are managed effectively in the local context there.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sotiris, and good afternoon to all of you, and thank you very much. Congratulations to C4 HEAL for giving an opportunity and conducting this very interesting event. I think India has, because of the population density in various sources that contributes, air pollution, was some kind of an, the kind of technology that required to be managed For example, you may be knowing it, two-stroke engines used to be contributing significant pollution. Now we are energy driven vehicles through electric vehicles are coming into picture. So hence, I feel that India is moving in a right direction. Under National Clean Air Program, India has identified more than 100 cities in order to improve the air quality. Under Ujjwal scheme, where the rural biomass emissions also been addressed with supplying the LPG to the replacing cooking with biomass combustion. So hence, I feel that they are going in a right direction. But since morning I'm listening to the talk, and more importantly, I just look at it. There are 3 segments of life. Maybe if you can divide the life into different age group, and probably maybe up to 20 is the one where they were more attached to the environment and other things, and maybe the 20 to 50 could be the age group where we are more looking at in terms of constructing the lifestyle. And maybe beyond 50, it's a kind of an enjoyment with a kind of an the surrounding environment. So I just look at it in terms of this is an age group. We need to look at it. How do we connecting the younger and the older age group to understand the importance of the energy aspect, and particularly as since in the morning we discussed several aspects of the clean energy. Particularly the solar. I looked at Australia, since it's a vast space. Solar is much more easy to acquire there. But as Supriya has mentioned in one of our presentation, managing the waste generated from this kind of sources is also important to address it. So in a nutshell, I think the most of the countries are going in a right direction in addressing the pollution problem. But I look at it only as we look at it from our SEPA project. There is an importance in terms of exchange of knowledge, what works in different countries or different locations, and probably we need to be address them, or maybe technology should be made enable to them to use it in order to address this pollution problem. And technology also should be made enable to use a very efficient way of using the energy for various aspects. So that's all my views. Thank you, Sotiris.
Thank you so much, Professor Shiva.
So yes, okay. I'll just take the one question, and then we might think about wrapping up for the.
Thanks. Question for you, Sotiris. I'm all for non-traditional research outputs, but there are also traditional research outputs that can be very effective. In the presentations around clean energy, one of the things that surprised me was that there was no economic analysis, because it seems to me that economic analysis of clean energy versus what we largely have at the moment would show enormous benefit in terms of lives lost and quality of life and so forth. So is there much literature around the economic aspects of clean energy?
I think that's a very good point. Can I pass the question to Veronica, who's been leading on the literature review?
Yeah, I neglected to acknowledge Catherine Joyce, a team member of ours who is leading that literature review process. There are economic papers, Chris. Yeah, we just didn't touch on them in the barriers and enablers presentation today. But they will be a feature of our learnings as we go through CE for Heal. Remember, this project is really about finding the best practice examples from communities. So yeah, the underpinning sort of methodology, I guess, is speaking to the stakeholders here in Central Australia to then identify the best practice examples. So that will help us choose those communities that we'll go to document what's happening there. Whether there's any economic analysis that is involved in those communities, I guess we'll find out as we proceed.
If I could add to that, I've done a lot of work looking at the impact of air pollution in China. Although it's not my work because I'm not an environmental economist, the value of lives lost each year is out of all proportion to what we understand the problem to be. It's so huge. There are, and I forget the numbers now. It's something like, Sotiris might have it on the tip of his tongue, but it's something like 30 million people die prematurely each year in China due to air pollution. And if we look at the economic impact of that, it soon outweighs or some of the benefits of generating the pollution. We could very easily, and people are around the world do the calculations to look at what 10 years of life lost would be for 35 million people per year. But as I say, it's not my exact field, but I'm aware of it. So this work is being done. It is very important that it is being done.
Thank you. Thank you. I fully agree that the economic argument is very important. We recently published a paper on the social cost of carbon. And of course, many of these social costs are not internalized in the cost-benefit analysis. So the impact on health and well-being and on communities many times is not taken into account in a quantitative way. So we talk about cost-benefit analysis, but not at the, many of these analyses that don't include the full cost of carbon or the full cost of air pollution on society.
Okay. Well, let me, I suppose, start wrapping up by saying a huge thank you to everyone who attended today's sessions and engaged in these really important and time-critical conversations, even without air conditioning for half of it. So well done. So big thank you to you. Thank you to Anne-Marie, University of Melbourne, for coordinating this week, this huge week, and for allowing us to present for the day. And obviously a huge thank you as well to all of the presenters that have spoken today and brought your knowledge forward and shared so willingly here. So please, thank you all.